Now, welcome to Worldchefs podcast. I'm your host, Ragnar, and you're listening to World on a Plate. Now, we recently celebrated the International Chef's Day on the 20th of October, a day to celebrate our noble profession, always remembering that it's our duty to pass on our knowledge and culinary skills to the next generation. So thousands of chefs have been involved, and some are still organizing events and supporting their communities and sharing their passion all through social media. And since its creation by the late chef Dr. Billy Gallagher in 2004, hundreds and thousands of, not millions of persons have been involved around the International Chef's Day globally, from children to chefs to what have you. So I wanted to use this occasion to pay a special tribute to Dr. Billy Gallagher, who touched the hearts of so many and was a mentor to a whole generation of chefs in South Africa and around the world. And one of those persons is with me is Rochelle Schaetzl, who I have the pleasure to welcome to this podcast. So welcome, Rochelle.
Good morning, Ragnar. It's a pleasure to be here.
And happy International Chef's Day.
Same to you.
Yeah, thank you. You obviously knew Billy well, and Billy, as most of us called him. So we'll just refer to him as Billy in this podcast because it's our Billy.
And I think he'll be happy with that.
Yes, and you know, so and we will bring out some of the memories later, but maybe for some of the people that are listening who wouldn't know who Billy was and what he meant to us, would you mind telling us a little bit about his story, his career, his life journey before we go into the memories? And
I mean, I think let me start off by saying, like, Billy was the honorary previous president of Worldchefs. I think he served 2 terms as president of Worldchefs. He was also the president and honorary life president of South African Chefs Association, that played a strong role in the journey and the evolution of Worldchefs. But more importantly, Billy was a chef like all of us. Came from very humble beginnings, grew up in Liverpool, and when he was a young adult, took the bold step in the late 70s to move to South Africa and to start a new life there. And just went on to do phenomenal, great things, to firstly professionalize and to recognize the profession in South Africa by being one of the founder members of the South African Chefs Association, but then continuing to also commit his life into making chefs aware of the plight of hunger, and how important it is for us to give back and not just to be here for ourselves. Unfortunately, it was on the way home during one of those events that in 1999 he was hijacked, shot, paralyzed, or from the neck down, and actually even post that event went on to do even more to address hunger, to promote the profession, to make us all aware of the importance of giving back, and that we are not just here for ourselves.
Yeah. No, that's remarkable, because you know what we have as a part of his legacy is what you mentioned. Still today, we have at Worldchefs the Billy Gallagher Young Chef Forum that he initiated. In his memory, he was the one who initiated, as I said earlier, the International Chef's Day, other amazing events like the Chef's Tour Against Hunger that he did in South Africa, and I think you were a part of. Do you, you could tell us a little bit what that was about? People might not know, but and maybe you can inform me that the World Tour Against Hunger.
World Cook Tour for Hunger.
So, is that after the incident?
No. So the first World Cooks Tour for Hunger happened in 1993. I remember it very, very well because I was a young trainee apprentice at the Holiday Inn in Pretoria, and we had a team of chefs from Australia coming out. So the whole event, basically Billy conceptualized the idea of bringing international chefs to South Africa to come, cook, impart their knowledge, share their experience, inspire the South African culinary community, but also in the process raise money, create awareness for hunger, and just mobilize the global chefs community behind. I think it was the first global culinary event of this nature where chefs actually took the lead in addressing social needs in the world. So that was in 1993. I remember there were 30 chefs from 30 countries coming. I think in total was 125 chefs that all had to pay their own way to South Africa, but got placed out in different locations where they cooked and developed and trained local chefs. There was a whole host of charitable events during the whole time. A lot of the proceedings were basically that was raised was all then used to plow back into specific charities that are working day in and day out on improving or relieving hunger in South Africa. So as I said, that was in 1993. Then in 1999, he had the accident. And returning from the UK after his treatment, it was just so much more on his heart that the reason why this incident happened is because there was someone that was hungry, that was angry, that had to do something about his situation, and that led to this hijacking. Billy used to famously say, "A hungry man is a hungry man is an angry man," and even though he was in a wheelchair, still then brought a group of us together in 2003 to arrange the second World Cooks Tour for Hunger. And that was just mind-blowing, a phenomenal event. I think it was, in the end, over 350 chefs that came out from something like 70 countries. We raised over, at that stage, 1.5 million rand that was raised. And plowed back into community development projects, et cetera, et cetera. And I hope there's a lot of those chefs that are dialing and listening into this podcast today, because I think we need to take a moment just to remember how special that event was and how we felt doing good.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it changed me. It was a really, really remarkable moment in my life's journey.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes because I came later, and when I look back, I look at what Worldchef is doing today with Worldchef Without Borders and International Chefs Day. I think that was probably like a precursor to what happened later. Is that moment that Billy initiated, of that of chefs are there to give back, and we unite to give back in masses.
Yeah, I think if I think about Worldchefs and the journey that Worldchefs as an organization has been on, initially when the organization was started out in 1928 in Paris, the primary objective was to form a governing body that would help to have the profession recognized as an official profession, to provide education, training, to mobilize for fair working conditions, etc. But as those objectives were achieved, it became more and more evident that the power that Worldchefs has is to assert the role of the chef in the community, to become a voice for chefs in addressing some of the challenges that society has. But more than anything else, we are chefs. We feed people on a daily basis. So we have a responsibility to also address hunger there where it's happening, So yeah, I think it came as a no-brainer then in 2004 that International Chefs Day would become a day where we celebrate our professional legacy. We promote our profession in our local organization, in our local communities or in our local cultures. We involve chefs with the community in doing good. So there's always been a charitable element to it, and there should be. But ultimately, we also just take a moment out to reflect and to pause and to say, thank you for what we have and for who we have, and enjoy the power of the white jacket.
He taught a really powerful lesson, especially like you mentioned in the way that he turned his very bad incident, the attack, into not into a bitterness, but into a hope and and a wake-up call almost to say, well, now I have less time to do what needs to be done to help others, really.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's a famous quote from another great South African, Nelson Mandela, used to say that resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person is going to die. And I know that that was in many ways Billy's life's philosophy as well, that I don't have time to be bitter about what happened. I've got limited time to do good with that which I still have. And knowing Billy before the accident, knowing him after the accident, and I'm sure that many of the guys, he's touched so many people's lives, so I'm not the only person that can vouch for that, fortunately, all the great things that he did before the incident and all the incredible relationships that he had built over so many years were relationships that he then could pull on and lobby and leverage in some of the incredible things that he's done thereafter. He in many ways jokingly always said, yeah, the only advantage of the wheelchair is when ladies bend over to kiss you, you have got a better view. But more than that, I think it also in many ways humbled him, made him obviously dependent on people, but as a result of it also made him more empathetic to people.
Yeah. No, that really, I think, is a really good summary of what Billy was and what he achieved, his legacy, and it's really touching, actually. Well, this is one of the most toughest episodes of podcast and touching episodes I think I had to manage, because it makes us think back at Billy and the memories we had, and I only was a part
and
of
the good times, you know, the good times and the not so good times, because I mean, Billy was my first boss when I left university, and I was this young, naive, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed South African little girl that stepped into his corporate office at Southern Sons in South Africa, and he was just an incredible mentor. Like, I remember he would give me these books, Harvey Mackay, How to Swim with the Sharks and Not to Be Eaten Alive, and all of these great management philosophy books. And he would say, like, now you read this tonight, I'm not going to make you write an exam on them, but I hope it means something to you. And he was just really committed to developing people around him, you know, not only academically or functionally skill-wise, but also even in like throughout my whole career, he has always been that mentoring person that when I was in a tough situation or had decisions to be taken, I knew that he was a phone call away and I could reach out to him for sobering advice. Not always what I wanted to hear, but most of the times exactly what I needed to hear. And I think because his life slowed down in many ways after the incident, he had time to reflect, he had time to think, and he had time to be wise. And that, I think, is one of the things that I miss most. It's just that wisdom that I could tap into, you know. And where does it leave me now? I think in many ways it's also changed my purpose in life, in the sense that I realized that there's just such a responsibility that we as more experienced, and I know me and you share the same year, but we as more experienced people have to nurture the talent of the future, to nurture young people, to look at the future of the profession, to say, where is all of this going? I know, and I'll just briefly mention, but I know many chefs around the world are struggling to find young people to come into the kitchen, to join the profession, to become chefs, to work in their restaurants, or, you know, and a big part of that is also, how do we nurture them? How do we mentor people? How do we celebrate and honor the values that Billy stood for?
Yeah. So he really sort of, for you, that was before and after Billy, there was a change in the way you also looked at your career path, your future. How did he? So sort of, what would you say like is the lesson, the memories you have of Billy, what you could take back and
yeah, I mean, there's just so many. I think primarily.
How did you meet up? Let's go there. So what was the first impression of Billy? When was the first time you walked into?
I mean, the first time I met Billy, I was a trainee chef in Holiday Inn, Pretoria. Billy came into the kitchen as, you know, part of his professional role, and he came into the kitchen and he shook hands with everyone.
That is sort of manager was. He was,
you know, he was not someone in a suit, unapproachable, aware of hierarchy, etc. When he engaged with you, it was eye to eye, you, the most important person in front of him, and we are in this conversation now. And he was just remarkably humble for the seniority and the authority that he had, you know. It's just sort of refreshingly unexpected. And then obviously over the years, my relationship from being a trainee and him being a senior executive in a global hotel corporation and the president of the Chefs Association has changed. And then there came obviously the incident. After the incident, we had World Cooks Tour for Hunger, where I was working for this key sponsor company and in many ways holding the partnership responsibility for the organization of the event with Billy. And there were some tough conversations, you know, tough conversations around leveraging resources, decisions that need to be taken in the project team, things that happened, didn't happen. And even though there were really several moments where we had to take make or break decisions, what was always remarkable was Billy's commitment to the cause, the vision that he had, and how he was not prepared to compromise on the impact, the quality, the detail, attention to detail of the event. But then also how he could leverage and how he could get things done through other people. So I think there's a lot of that I've learned in that time. And then obviously as time progressed, later on, me and Billy co-published a book that I had written. And I also contributed to when he published his biography. So over a period of time, also our relationship changed. And so I've known him in several stages of my career over, I mean, multiple decades, you know. But there was always this constant of trust, transparency, honesty, and in many ways, he's also framed my leadership paradigm and who I've become as a professional person.
Yeah. And is that still driving you? Because I'm saying that because I know Rochelle, we met in Paris many years ago with the aim of, you know, the aim was you came to Paris, we met to see how to support Worldchefs and I remember you saying, yeah, because I want to make sure that Billy's legacy is alive. So how important is that for you? Is that still your guiding, like that guides you, it seems, is you get involved, give your time to it.
I mean, I think in many ways, we all have a responsibility to give back. The beauty of the culinary profession, or the culinary fraternity, if we want to call it that, is that none of us got to where we are without someone giving us an opportunity, or someone leaning in to help us, or guiding us, or sharing wisdom with us. So this is not a selfless profession, or this is not a selfish profession. It's a selfless profession where we have a responsibility to also give back, coach, mentor, develop others for generations to come. And sometimes I see that there are chefs that have become extremely selfish, self-centered, self-obsessed in many ways. And I just think, well, that's not, we're the hospitality industry. That's not what we're about, you know? So yeah, I think sometimes it's worth to just to take a moment to look in the mirror to say, who have I become? And what is the impact that I'm having in my daily existence on others around me? What have I done today to make this profession a better place for other people?
Correct. Yeah, that is much of that was yeah. Billy inspired so many people to think about others, and to move the boundaries. What is your sort of a personal memory of Billy? Were there any times that there were harsh debates, or there were other?
Many, like anyone that's ever had to present a budget to Billy will know that there will be harsh moments, No, but I think it's always been respectful first and foremost, factual. So you play the ball, not the person, yeah, just done with like the bigger picture in mind, yeah, I've seen Billy very upset about unfairness, inequality, but also always with from a perspective of, let me put myself in the shoes of the other person. Why is this person behaving like this? How can I unblock the situation? So yeah, anecdotally, I mean, I said, many month interview meetings, project meetings where there was a focus on what do we want to achieve here and what do we want the experience to be for others coming out of things. I remember the Dublin conference where we started out the Young Chefs Forum. It was the first Young Chefs Forum that we had, and the absolute obsession in Billy to really establish, it was then called the Hans Bushham's Forum for Young Chefs still. I think in that first forum we had 25, 30 young chefs joining. But the responsibility to start at that stage a forum that we would grow and that we can nurture chefs for the future, and also to look at the sustainability and longevity of Worldchefs, to say that if this is an organization that is just for senior chefs, where's the future going to come from? And we've just come back from Abu Dhabi like earlier this year, and you see how big the Young Chefs Forum has become. And I know that in the meanwhile we've also renamed it the Billy Gallagher Young Chefs Forum for that very reason, to celebrate and to recognize his legacy. But it was concerning to me that during that Young Chefs Forum, that when I asked the Young Chefs Forum on the first day who Billy was, that very few of them knew who he was. Yep. The most famous chef they could mention was a TV chef, and not someone that has actually done anything that lives up to the value of the white jacket, So yeah, I think it's up to us to keep his legacy alive. It's up to us to keep the values that this foundation or this association is built on alive, and to not to compromise on that.
Exactly. And for those who might be discovering Billy in this podcast, I mean, many of us, some of us, we knew him and were lucky enough to be able to share moments with him, but many know him from far, and others listening might not know actually who he was. He had a really, really rich life from, as you mentioned, from coming from England. He was at the Dorchester. He was a partner with the late Paul Bocuse. He all that he did led him to meet with Nelson Mandela and other high dignitaries, and so he was very impactful, and he wrote thankfully before passing away, he wrote a book about his life story, and people can still find that, and it's run through his foundation. The book is called Lettuce and Lady Breast. Yeah. Do you know why? Why?
You need to read the book to know that. I am not, and I'm just going to say, I'm not that lady. It's another story.
You're not going to do any spoilers.
No. But I think that is also typical Billy, that of all the titles that he could choose for his biography, that's what he landed with. Yes. because he always had a twinkle in the eye, and he always kept his sense of humor through whatever happened, and yeah, it's also a reminder. I mean, I know we've been quite serious and sentimental in this podcast so far today, but not to forget the lighter moments with Billy, the fun that we've had, the great jokes that he could tell, how him and John Clancy would always sing Billy Boy at conferences, those type of things. He was just a chef that lived larger than life. And yeah, in an era before TV chefs or podcasts, I'm sure if Billy was still with us, he would have had the podcast with the biggest following. That I'm sure about,
Yeah.
But yeah, I really feel honored and privileged to have had him in my life and to have benefited from his mentorship. And I would like to believe that he's still somewhere out there watching over me.
Yeah. It's our biggest fear. Like, he's watching. I hope we're doing the right thing, because our goal and our
this podcast will just bomb out.
Everybody in Worldchefs should be actually watching out that Billy is watching. So make sure that we are doing the right thing. We continue the legacy.
He's not checking our food cost anymore, but he's still watching us.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Yeah, and as I said, his life story is just amazing, and the book is available. Lettuce and Lady's Breast. So Google that, and for anybody listening who wants to know really who Billy was, it's a lot of stories and
anecdotes about him.
Yeah. So really, I want to thank you, Rochelle, for sharing all these moments and for sharing who is Billy, and reminding us ourselves why we are here, really, why that this passion in Worldchefs is so strong. It's because of the people that came before us, isn't it?
Yeah, and also that we need to become those people for the people that will come after us.
Right.
I think we live in a time where it's so easy to become self-centered, self-obsessed, and insular in your own thinking, but to realize that the principles of hospitality is about giving to others, making others feel at home, and giving back. And this is bigger than just getting up every day to cook on a line. This is about, our purpose in life.
Yeah. Beautiful. We just need John Clancy now singing
Billy Boy. You can put it into the
we'll put it in the podcast. I'll make a note of that here.
Perfect.
Excellent, Rochelle. So thank you very much for coming, taking time from your busy schedule, and I know it's never an
always
issue.
A pleasure.
You're always there for us. So I want to thank you for that in so many ways, that you helped us through a lot at Worldchefs. It's always a great supporter and an actor as well. So not to forget. So Rochelle, I want to thank you very much with all my heart.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me, Ragnar.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. We were talking about our Billy Gallagher, Dr. Billy Gallagher, and remembering him on this very special day, the International Chefs Day that he initiated. So thank you for joining in, and well, I hope you enjoyed it, and I wish you all a very happy International Chefs Day wherever you are. Please send us in your pictures, what you've been doing throughout the week or the couple of weeks around this special day. Send us all the materials so we can share with the world really what you chefs are doing, and what the power of the white jacket can do. So with that, I'll bid you farewell. You've been listening to World Chef Podcast. I'm your host, Ragnar Fredriksson, and this is World on a Plate. Thank you very much.